All right, it looks like I have 7 o'clock on my laptop, so I'd like to call to order this regular City Council virtual meeting of Monday, March 8th, 2021. If we could all say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Barb, would you do the roll, please?
Please remember to state your county, city, and state. Lanyon.
City of Williamston, Ingham County, Michigan.
Smith.
Here, City of Williamston, Ingham County, Michigan.
Pratt.
Here, City of Williamston, Ingham County, Michigan.
Bellinger.
Here, City of Williamston, Ingham County, Michigan.
Weiss. Rhines.
Here, City of Williamston, Ingham County, Michigan.
Gilroy.
Here, City of Williamston, Ingham County, Michigan. I did receive a call from Councilman Weiss. Unfortunately, he is not able to be here. So if anyone would like to make a motion to excuse, I would accept that.
Motion to excuse Councilman Weiss. Smith.
Thank you. Do I have support?
Second, Rhines.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Barb, do you need to call a roll for that excuse of the, okay, if you could do that, please.
Smith.
Yes.
Pratt.
Yes.
Bellinger.
Yes.
Rhines.
Yes.
Gilroy.
Yes.
Lanyon.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Now I'm looking for approval of the agenda as submitted unless a council member has a change that needs to be brought forward.
I'll move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Thank you. And do I have support for that?
Second, Rhines.
Barb, that was Lanyon that made the motion.
Sorry, Barb.
Thanks. All right. Moving forward, we have an opportunity for audience participation.
Mayor Gilroy.
Yes.
We need to take a roll.
Oh, sorry about that, Barb. You're absolutely right. Can I have a roll call for that, please?
Pratt.
Yes.
Bellinger.
Yes.
Rhines.
Yes.
Gilroy.
Yes.
Lanyon.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
All right. Now moving along, we have an opportunity for audience participation. Do we have audience in the out there, Holly, that would like to participate?
I believe our 2 audience members are for the for the Small Talk Children's Advocacy present.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll get to that in just a moment. Right now, I have the honor of reading a proclamation to retired Officer John P. Long, who has joined us this evening. You snuck off, John, before we could actually get this to you over at the PD. So I would like to set up a time where we can present this to you in person. But I'd like to read this if I could. Tonight, I'm very honored to be able to present this council certificate of achievement. And it says, whereas John P. Long, during the 19 years he has served the city of Williamston as a police officer, has been known well throughout the community for his pleasant demeanor and smile when serving the police department in the Williamston community. And whereas among many accomplishments, Officer P. Long was instrumental in starting Neighborhood Watch program in the city. The Neighborhood Watch program morphed into the super successful National Night Out and also the John P. Long Car Show, drawing thousands of people into McCormick Park each August. While on patrol in the city, he also delivered 2 babies. And whereas the performance of his duties and responsibilities and his work relationships were always carried out in a friendly, thoughtful, genuine, and helpful manner, earning him much respect from his peers and throughout the community. And whereas Officer P. Long tendered his resignation to the city of Williamston effective February 27th of 2021, now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Williamston expresses its sincere appreciation and thanks to John Pelong for his contributions to the community and commends him for the manner in which he carried out his responsibilities and duties as a police officer on this, the 8th day of March 2021. I had the pleasure of riding with you for a lot of shifts, John, and I can just say that I learned a lot from you. You know this community inside and out, and the fact that you gave 19 years to this community speaks so highly of your dedication, your love for this community, and you're going to be missed. And you snuck out. So, once we get everybody's signature on this, definitely would like to set up an appointment where you can come back and, see us. And any other council members they'd like to say to Officer Pelong. Go ahead, jump in. Yes, go ahead, Gene.
Oh, yes. Well, I'll tell you what, coming back from Florida and starting again with the police department here, it is super difficult to find anyone that doesn't know John in the city. He touched a lot of people's lives in the course of the 19 years. So the city definitely is, in his debt, and he certainly is served with pride. And the John Pelong car show, what a testament to an amazing man. John, your dad, also a police officer himself. Just all the way around. I guess the Pelong family is just meant to leave their mark on the community.
Thanks, Gene. Anyone else? All right. Well, John, thanks so much for being here this evening. Do you have a few words you'd like to leave us with? Unmute yourself. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Hey, yes.
All right, sounds good. The one thing a couple of things that I do want to say is it was absolutely my pleasure and an honor to serve the city of Williamston. The city of Williamston, the community of Williamston has been just absolutely phenomenal to me. And I've built so many lifelong friendships, relationships, everything with people in the community. And the police department has always treated me absolutely phenomenally well. And I will be forever grateful for that. And I will be forever grateful for the opportunity to serve and protect the people of the city of Williamston. And thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, John, thank you so much for being here this evening. I wish we were actually in council chambers to do this, but we'll get back to that one day. But we'll touch base and we'll get this signed and get this in your hands. And don't be a stranger. Come back and visit. We would love it.
I promise.
Check in with us.
Williamston will always be home to me and family.
Absolutely.
So I'll be there.
Absolutely. All right, John. Well, thank you so much for being here tonight. I appreciate that. All right. Moving on our agenda, we have a presentation from Small Talk Children's Advocacy. And who do we have with us tonight?
Hi, I'm Alex Brace.
Hey, Alex. Thank you for being here this evening.
Yes, thank you so much, Mayor, for having me, and thank you to the City Council for allowing us to address all of you about our Prevention Month campaign that we have coming up in April. So again, my name is Alex Brace. I'm the Executive Director of the Small Talk Children's Advocacy Center. We're a nonprofit located in Lansing that serves children in Ingham and Eaton County who have been victims of sexual or severe physical abuse. So we work with law enforcement, child protective services, medical professionals, prosecutors to investigate and coordinate cases of child sexual abuse and severe physical abuse. Like I said, in Ingham and Eaton counties. Child abuse is a silent epidemic with devastating long-term and short-term effects. I think because of the taboo nature of child abuse, it's not something that people are really happy to discuss, which is one of the reasons why we're so grateful for the opportunity to address, the City Council in Williamston about such an important topic. Because I think that some of the statistics, because of that reason, may get lost on people to know that, 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be abused before they turn the age of 18 is a really staggering statistic to think about how many children live in our communities and, how many people that actually impacts is pretty substantial. So again, not only is the public not informed of, the scope of child sexual abuse and physical abuse, but I think even fewer people know how to recognize it and what to do when a child discloses abuse to an adult. So that's part of what we want to be able to do is we want to be part of the solution. A lot of our work is reactive. A child discloses that they've been abused. We provide a safe space for them to be able to share their stories and provide free counseling. But we want to stop this before it happens in the first place. Ideally, we would be an organization that wouldn't have to exist if things went, I think, the way that we all hope they would. So, if as a community, we can become more educated about this issue, children will feel confident to share the truth about what happened to them, and adults will know how to respond and react appropriately and responsibly. We have children who come into our center every day who, share that the weight of the world gets lifted off of their shoulders just by being able to share their stories, even before they get to the counseling piece. One of the reasons that we're addressing your city council is to ask for your support for the Pinwheels for Prevention campaign that we're doing during the month of April, which is Child Abuse Prevention Month, which is a big month for us in the Advocacy Center world and at Small Talk in particular. You should have received a packet with some information about some different things that we can do to encourage community engagement throughout the months of March and April this year. So the first thing is donate. So we are inviting the public to make a suggested donation of $25 for what we're calling a Pinwheel Kit. So in this kit, you get 10 pinwheels, some information about how to prevent child abuse that's aimed at children and some that's aimed at adults. And you'll get a small yard sign that you can put in your yard. So one, as people are getting out, it was a beautiful day today. As people are getting out and being able to walk around their neighborhoods a little bit more, being able to have this pinwheel garden in your yard that can help kind of draw attention to the topic of child sexual abuse and begin those conversations that help break down those barriers so that child abuse can't be the secret that it has continued to be for such a long time. The second piece is education. So Small Talk offers trainings and, just speaking engagements to anybody who's interested. We want to make sure that the community has the information and the tools to be able to combat child abuse as best as possible. We can provide a 2-hour training to, a church group or a community group, or we can come into a staff meeting for 15 minutes and provide some information as well. So we can be really flexible in that. We would love to have people, schedule some of those meetings during April, but we know that child sexual abuse and physical abuse is not something that just happens once, during the month of April. This is a year-round thing. So we would definitely, if April is not the best time for anybody, we definitely want to make that available to everyone. And then the last piece is just to volunteer as well. So we've been going around the community, organizing some different pinwheel planting campaigns. So we have some parks like in Meridian Township that we're going to be planting some pinwheels. We'd love to spread this across our counties and our service area as much as possible. So if there's anybody who's interested in getting a group of people together to plant a pinwheel garden in a park or, some landmark in Williamston where it would be really eye-catching, please let us know. We would be happy to, send volunteers out. We would be happy to assist in that because this is a cause that's obviously really near and dear to our hearts. So in closing, just as city leaders, I'd urge you to promote the message of child abuse prevention throughout the month of April. Our work is to spread hope, healing, and justice for all the children who are impacted by child sexual abuse and physical abuse. We know that they aren't the only victims of this. Their families are as well. We want to heal the entire family when they're impacted by child sexual abuse. And we, are counting on, all the adults in all of our communities that we serve to help stop this crime before it happens by educating ourselves about child abuse prevention. So you can learn more about how to get those Pinwheel Kits or about just the work that we do in general at Small Talk by going to our website. And that is smalltalkcac.org/prevention. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. And once again, thank you for the opportunity to give me a few minutes to speak about the work that we do.
Great. Thank you, Alex, so much. This is a great topic. Thank you so much for making sure to give us the handout that you did and the website that definitely I think we could share with our service organizations here in town as well. Does anybody have any questions for Alex while we have him available right now?
I don't have any questions. We haven't had the pleasure yet, Alex, in my day life. I represent all the prosecutors in the state here in Michigan. Doug and Carol rave about your organization. They love you guys and all of the stuff you do. You're a great organization. Help.
Thank you.
The children in these two counties. So anything I can do to help, I'm here for you guys. So thank you for everything you guys do.
Yes, thank you so much. That's great to hear.
Great. Alex, thank you so much for being here this evening. Definitely, like I said, because we have your website, we can share that with service organizations here in the Williamston community. And I'm not sure if we have this, the ability to put this on the Williamston webpage, but I certainly will be sharing it on my own personal page because I think this is super important. And thank you so much for what your organization does for the kids out there that need to have a voice. We really appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye. All right, moving along our agenda, we have our council meeting minutes for February 22nd, 2021. I'm looking for an approval motion actually to move that forward unless there's a change that needs to be made.
I'll move to approve the minutes that were submitted to the council.
Thank you. Do I have support for that? Thank you.
Support, Smith.
Thank you, Jean. Barb, will you call the roll for the council meeting minutes of February 22nd, 2021?
Smith,
Yes.
Pratt,
Yes.
Bellinger,
Yes.
Rhines,
Yes.
Gilroy,
Yes.
Lanyon.
Yes.
All right, now we have accounts payable. Noah, I have I'm sure you were able to review these, and so I'll go ahead and open that up for you.
Thank you, Mayor. I did have a chance to review all the invoices and the checks, and I want to thank Rachel and her team for doing, again, a wonderful job of all the documentation. I didn't find anything that really stood out, so I would like to make the motion to approve checks 74112 dated 2/16 of 21 to check 74148 dated 2/25/21, and also the ACH checks 82 through 91 in a total of $760,312.85.
Great, thank you, Noah.
Then I open the floor if anybody has any questions for Corey or for myself.
I don't have a question for you or Corey. I just wanted to check with Chief. I saw in there that the 2017 Explorer had a repair. Is that pretty insignificant repair? It's a pretty low number, but I was just wondering if you knew anything about that.
Yes, that vehicle's been having transmission problems, and the transmission has been under warranty. We've had it to the dealership, I think, twice now, and they found some kind of part that they felt needed replaced, and that was to our expense. It wasn't under warranty, so that was done, and so far so good. The vehicle's running normal again.
Great, thanks, Chief. I appreciate that. All right, we have a motion on the floor to move forward the accounts payable. Do I have support for that?
Second, Smith.
All right, thank you both. All right, if there's no further discussion, Barb, will you call the roll for accounts payable, please?
Pratt,
Yes.
Bellinger,
Yes.
Rhines,
Yes.
Gilroy,
Yes.
Lanyon,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Great, thanks so much. Moving on to our action items. I did ask for this item to be put on our agenda, and I want to give a little background as to why I did this. Being on council since 2015, I think this is the first year that I've seen significant community, what do I want to say? A very vocal community through social media, obviously, is where this is coming from regarding the maintenance of sidewalks. So in conversations with Corey and talking to him about what could we do better as a community, or what is our current practice with sidewalk clearing, our ordinances that we have in place, and then also in speaking with a couple other council members, I really wanted to bring this to council and really just have an overall conversation. And it may be an action item this evening. We may push it back to a discussion item because we need more information. But I wanted to get this out there for us. And I know that we had 60-degree weather today, and everything is starting to melt. And I don't really see anything significant in the forecast, but this is Michigan, and we all know that that can change. But, and I know that every single winter is different. We have different winter storm events, but I wanted to bring this forward because I wanted to have everybody have the opportunity to give their thoughts and ideas and talk about it openly about, what can we do better as a community as far as downtown maintenance of sidewalks and trail paths. We know that our boardwalk is going to be redone. That was one of the concerns of the community, was that east side of Putnam was not getting cleared, but we know that that's because of the condition of the boardwalk and not being able to put equipment down it. So I want to go ahead and open this up to Corey. This is a great memo. It's very thorough, very detailed, and I hope all council members had an opportunity to read through this, but I want to go ahead and turn this over to Corey at this point.
Thank you, Mayor Gilroy. So the memo was something I put together in the email when this was kind of a hot topic, and I'd heard from a couple council members on this. And so I really just repurposed it for the purpose of this discussion and added some additional insights. And, the one thing I would add is that with the upcoming boardwalk replacement, which is going to be, more of a hard surface path, it is something that Scott and I have talked about as far as the fact that, as we add more paths, as we add more trails, there's going to be an expectation, or at least a consideration from the community, that those are accessible in the winter months. And so really the goal in trying to get some feedback now is if, we change our practice of, in particular, the trail system, since the trail went into McCormick Park I think it was about 2010 or 2011. Mm-hmm. It'd be better to start talking about that now, as opposed to like after the first snow in October, November, and now we're changing on SHOTUS. And so what we haven't really been able to do, that I'm sure will be some questions, is to actually provide sort of an estimate of hours and labor, equipment costs and salting and things like that. So we've not yet had the ability to do that, but I think that if that's something council is very interested in pursuing, having this discussion now would give us some time to perhaps consider that as part of the upcoming budget process. And so I'm not going to, regurgitate the memo. Other than that, we did talk about, the three different kind of key areas. And certainly I think the trails in McCormick Park and their park system is a big one, because we do not maintain those in the winter today. Whereas, sidewalks, I think the biggest one has been that west side of the bridge. That has been related to the boardwalk condition. And of course, the topic of downtown sidewalks, which is those in our DDA district, where we will come in and plow them if we get about 2 inches. But if it's less than that, we're not mobilizing for plowing, it falls to the business owner. And that was something I touched on a little bit at the last meeting as well. So those are kind of the three areas of discussion. And I guess with that, I'm anxious to hear any thoughts, concerns, and direction.
Thanks, Corey. Jean, go ahead and just raise your hand up so I can see it in the screen, and I'll call on you. So we'll go to Brandon after Jean.
My question would be for Tim. Specifically, like right now, we're not maintaining those things like the path around McCormick Park or whatnot. And if someone chooses to go out there, it's kind of like at your own peril, and that's not something the city maintains in the winter. But once we take that cap off, we start maintaining it, it becomes an expectation. Now someone has an issue out there, and now you, City of Williamston, weren't doing your job properly. And would we be creating liability for the city where it otherwise is not existing so much right now? Just a question.
Well, normally a property owner doesn't have liability for a natural accumulation of snow and ice, but if they take measures to alleviate that condition, then they're responsible for the condition that they've created. It's no longer a natural accumulation, for instance. Yep. With regard to municipal liability, though, we have governmental immunity. There is an exception called the public highway exception that does extend to sidewalks along a public highway. So it's unclear whether or not the exception to governmental immunity would translate to a trail in a park for those purposes. You are also correct that there is somewhat of an assumption of the risk when someone undertakes a recreational activity on public land.
Thank you, Tim.
I think my only other,
go ahead.
Just real quick concern, managing a 108-acre gigantic facility that I do, seeing the toil that the salt and the scraping and all that stuff causes on the pathways and the sidewalks. I mean, we're talking 6 figures of repair every single year just for our little campus, just from that winter salt and scraping. So just something to keep in our mind.
Well, in that regard, the concern you raised initially was with regard to the transitory nature of snow and ice accumulating. What you're otherwise talking about is the disrepair of the sidewalk itself, which probably cause a greater exposure to liability because someone could trip on a hole in the way.
Yeah.
Brandon?
So, I mean, I think the concerns that were raised, I mean, because I was one of the ones that sent Corey the Facebook stuff going. I think part of it, right, is that we were right at about a year of everyone being quarantined, and then people wanted to go walk. I mean, honestly, because we hadn't seen that before. I mean, I haven't been on council, but I've been in Williamston for a while. And it's just, I mean, people were wanting to get out. And so we saw a lot of concern from that. I mean, they wanted to go walk. And the main places I heard were the bridge near where I live, crossing the river, and then downtown. So, I mean, maybe it's part of, what we talked about before is maybe the businesses just need to be made aware again that, hey, it's your duty to shovel this stuff. I mean, when it's heavy, I know that, Scott sends some people out sometimes to plow out the heavy stuff, but other than that, it's theirs. And then the bridge. So I'm not, whatever that has to happen. But I think, we're kind of right. I'm kind of with Gene on this. The more duty we take on, it's going to become expectation. I mean, if you go to Ted Black Woods, they're not plowing any of that. They're not shoveling any of those paths. And it's not that dissimilar from what we do. So, I mean, I'm kind of with Gene on if we start down this path, we're going to have to keep it up. I mean, having the information, as Corey mentioned, like we don't have it right now, but I mean, getting the information about how much it's going to cost us, I mean, it doesn't hurt to have that. But as of now, I'm kind of on the path of we'll continue what we're doing and maybe just educate more on what needs to happen from non-city folk, not non-city workers, I mean.
Dan, go ahead.
I'm kind of with Brandon and Gene here. With our DPW already does a ton with a large snowfall. When asking them to then clear the parks later on, they already have duties. At what point will they be able to get to the park? How far down the list is that? One plus when the spring comes, part of, like Gene brought up, part of plowing along a grassy area is you are going to gouge up and ruin sod along that path. And then the guys are going to be coming back, spending time fixing that, overseeding, all that kind of stuff. And that is all year dependent on what kind of damage you did over the year. One year it may be light, the next year you may have a ton of sod repair to do. And we will have, our parks look amazing, but it takes time for the grass to come back after that. And we have people unhappy now. With the snow, we could very easily have people unhappy in June when we're still trying to get grass to come back from where we damaged it with the plow in February. And without the cost analysis that Corey had talked about, and I know they haven't had time to do it yet, I'm not willing to take action on it.
Thank you, Dan. Other council members? I'm not seeing Tom or Noah raise their hands, but chime in if you want. Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Sorry, I was kind of like preparing to comment after Dan was done, and then my internet completely went out and everything went blank. So I just made it back.
Okay.
So I didn't really get to hear most of what Dan said, but my only quick comment was that although it would be really nice to have the park sidewalks and everything cleared and salted and everybody could use them all the time, my biggest concern would just be cost. I mean, would we have the funds to fund? And that may be what Dan just said. I don't know. But, the increase in hours and, equipment, labor, spring maintenance, etc.
Thank you. Go ahead, Brandon.
One thing, maybe, I'm not sure how we would exactly say this, because I know there's some intricacies into what's going on with some of, how DPW workers are going right now, but I know that we have some shortage, right? And we've been kind of contracting out. A lot of the concern that I saw was what you typically hear. I mean, the same thing that people complain about water is that you're paying so many taxes and why are we not getting the service? I think maybe whether it comes from City Hall or whatever we need to do, explaining that, DPW is doing more than what we've expected them to do on the short staff that they have. Because, I mean, they're doing phenomenal work for having, 2 people down. So
right.
Or we need to phrase that without creating problems with, the conditions of those workers, just to explain to everyone that, they're doing a great job for what is actually their staff levels right now.
Thank you. I hear everybody, and this is why it's so important for us to be transparent. We've talked about that word so many times in different council meetings and during goal setting and everything, is that we want to be as transparent as possible to our community. So this is such a good dialogue to have, and I agree completely. We cannot overextend our DPW crew when we are short-staffed. We know that they are doing absolutely everything that they are assigned to do, and more so as far as tasks. But because we had that community, our community be vocal, I wanted us to sit down and talk about it as a group and have Corey put together some information for us and just kind of start that dialogue. And I do agree with Corey that once that new boardwalk is done and, we're investing that time into creating these community open spaces that we have, we might have to re-look at that later and what is it going to take to maintain it so that it can be long lasting, extending the life of it. And I've never seen the community be as vocal as they have. And you're absolutely right, Brandon. We've all been cooped up for us. It'll be a solid year next week. I mean, at least for me, it will be. But, some people, it started earlier. And so with the warmer weather and thank goodness for the thawing and everything's super clean. I just walked to the middle school today and back, and that was a long walk, but it was perfect outside and everything looked great. And there was a ton of people at McCormick Park. I couldn't believe how many kids were, at the park and people walking down the path. So I just think, bringing this forward now, it gives us something to talk about later. I don't know necessarily if we, like I said, if we were going to take action on something, but it sounds like this is more of a discussion item. I think everybody would agree that we could table this indefinitely, correct, Holly, until we bring it back as an agenda item?
Correct.
Okay, so what I would look for is a motion to table this indefinitely with support, and knowing that it's something that is now we've discussed and we need to think about as we move forward with that new boardwalk project. If people are in agreement with that.
I'll move to table this until a later time.
Thank you.
Bellinger supports it. I beat you.
All right. Thanks, Noah. Thank you so much for all of the discussion. I appreciate it. You know, it's valuable to have everybody's input, and we all see different things on community social media and talk with different people in community. So being able to discuss something like this is important to make sure that we're doing better for the community. So we did have a motion to table with support. So if there's no further discussion, I'll ask Barb to call a roll.
Gilroy,
Yes.
Lanyon,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pratt,
Yes.
Bellinger,
Yes.
Rhines.
Yes.
All right. That concludes what action item we had on the agenda. So moving along to discussion items, it is City Hall Facility Needs Assessment. And I'm just going to turn this right over to Corey, and it looks like he's ready.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to share my screen, so bear with me. All right, so tonight I've got a brief presentation recall, and the reason we're bringing this up now is twofold. The first is that we have had some money budgeted over the last 2 fiscal years to work on some needed repairs at City Hall. And we were making some progress toward that in the winter of 1920. And then COVID happened in March of 2020. And with the uncertainty surrounding our revenue sharing from the state of Michigan, our larger capital items in the general fund were sort of the first to be paused. And so we've paused all of that facility related work. And as we're now almost done with the 3rd quarter of the fiscal year, we can comfortably say that state share revenue has been much better than anticipated. Right now, I think the general fund is probably on track to finish on the revenue side between $55,000 and $65,000 to the good. And you may remember at our last audit meeting in December, the auditors commented on our solid fund balance within the general fund. And so it's time to really look at this again as we consider our next budget. And then I mentioned it was twofold. The second issue is we just had a series of events in the last month that have more or less reaffirmed that there is a need to invest some time and energy on City Hall. And so with that said, I'm going to do a little bit of history for all of council, but in particular some of our newer members, and then we'll dive into kind of a high-level look at some of the key issues. So, history lesson: City Hall was built in 1890. This is a picture of it from the 1910 era. You can see, it looks similar to what's here today, other than the additions that have been added on. It was both a town hall and a fire station. Sometime in the mid-1900s, there was an addition added and a facade on the front. And so the area to the west, which is where we have clerk, treasurer, and city manager offices, were added on. A couple more pictures showing just how the area looked with the water next to City Hall and various projects. There was also a note here that the original addition did not have a pitched roof. It just had a nice flat roof, and at some point we've not been able to find the records. There was a nice pitched roof added to City Hall. So it's always been an iconic building in our downtown. In the early 1990s, there was probably the last big investment in the building. Was funded in part with the DDA's help. And you can see here, this was the council chambers pre-renovation. And, this was the new table that council members have at various times found a bit tight, but that was built in 1990. And then they did some ceiling work. And so you can see above the ceiling tiles, there's actually a really nice tin ceiling, but that's been covered up with HVAC stuff and ceiling tiles. And then, probably the nicest thing they did is they did make the outside look more historic again. They covered up the wording there with this new brick facade, and that's what we've been for the last 30 years. And there's a picture of more recent times. So I'm not going to read all this. I know there's a lot of text here, but some of the things that we'll talk about is the City Hall roof. And in 2008, after the tornado, there was some money that was received to re-shingle the roof. And I just think this is a very interesting case because, money was probably very limited. 2008 was not a great time in the economy. And the city did a bid form that just said, remove all layers of shingle, prep, and re-shingle. And so the winning bidder did exactly that. They said they will propose to furnish a 30-year shingle. But there was a quote that went through all the things that we probably should have done to bring the roof up to code, including having ventilation added to the roof, having the right sheeting or boards, flashing, and various other things that would have helped with the roof. And so because some of that stuff wasn't done, we have had leaks in the City Hall roof. There's various, stains that you can see in the ceiling tiles. This picture was from the winter of 19, where we had an ice dam form next to the cupola. And we actually had a company called the Garland Company. They'll come in and do like a free roof assessment in hopes that you would purchase their building supplies. And so, it's not completely independent, but it was a good first step. They did kind of a deep dive on the inside of our attic as well as on top of the roof, and they were able to identify some of the areas. And their ultimate recommendation was there were some short-term things that we should do, but they recommended strongly that we bring in an architect or engineer to, help understand what our needs are before we throw, good money after bad. And then the other big one that's been in our budget but has not been done yet is that staircase that goes up to the second story, which is where we have some storage space for files and also access to our attic. And you can see in the picture here, that's been rotting. It's open air, it's open to critters. And so, these two things are really what we've tried to focus on when we think about a repair budget. And we've just thrown a number out in the budget without really a lot of supporting material. And so I note here that we need a professional solution, but in the early 2010s, when the city was looking at doing a new police building, there was this rendering done as well as a floor plan that would have, extended City Hall and created, some expansion for City Hall as well as the police building. And for various reasons, probably the number one thing being funding, we were not able to do that as a city. We were able to build a wonderful police station, and I think it's a real testament to the city administration and council at the time that was done without any need for debt. So that was funded, and we can talk about that another time if anybody's interested. But it was a good outcome. But you can see, this would have been a very interesting building. This area in this rectangle is our current council chambers. And so that would have become a meeting space as well as sort of the front window. And then we would have gotten, I would say a more modern, proper council chambers. They would have rebuilt the staircase, but it would have been internal to the building. And that's where some of my hesitation, on do we spend 15 grand to rebuild a staircase if that's not what the eventual plan is? And so this was an interesting floor plan that would have expanded some of the space here and provided a bit more functionality while also perhaps, renovating the existing City Hall. And so as we think about these repairs, I've kind of touched on this, we don't want to just throw some money at a repair and not have a sense of what the bigger picture plan is. And so we really feel that we cannot do that without some professional assistance from an architect, which is what we had a couple years ago when we did this floor plan here and the renderings that eventually, turned into the police building. And what it can do for us is provide us both the near-term cost estimating, perhaps the designs that we would need to be able to get building permits, because you'd have to have stamped drawings, as well as a bigger plan for the future. And so I mentioned that, just a couple recent experiences, and these are just probably mostly in the last year. Some on council may remember about this time last year, we had shrews living inside the walls near where Holly sits, and it was a very terrible smell. And Holly could probably share with you how frustrating that experience was, because we have like hand-me-down furniture that contains these large, I think they're steel partitions. They're not very easily moved, and you can't take them down without impacting the desk. And so in order to get in the wall, we had to, disassemble a portion of Holly's workstation. And this was in pre-COVID times. And there's no doubt it was a big disruption. And one thing I want to say is, the staff here never complains about this stuff. And I think that's a real testament to their attitudes. But it was a mess, and it took a long time to figure out. And I think, we've been a little bit lucky that it hasn't returned. But we got the shrews out of there, and the smell dissipated after a couple months. And then just more recently, we had the 30-year-old furnace died on us about a week and a half ago, and we got that replaced. And then we lost electricity here probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it ended up being a silly issue with our breaker. But in the process, we had about wall outlets that weren't working, and we couldn't even get to the wall outlets because the partitions blocked them. And we have like 1992 era extension cords like coming underneath them. So, you can't even replace them without, getting a lot of help from DPW to move those things, which is just a mess. And then probably the number one crazy thing we learned last week is we had a water main break, and it was right about here next to City Hall. And in that process, Scott DeVries, our city engineer, he had noted that they've always tried to get a location on that water main, and they feared that it actually ran under City Hall. And so while we weren't happy with the water main break, we were able to actually put our equipment on there to locate the water main. And we did discover, this picture doesn't really do it justice, but the water main does run right under the north wall of City Hall, the additions that were added on, and then it goes north. And so just want to acknowledge Scott and his crew. They had the idea to put in a water valve right about here while they were doing this work. And so we had a small expense, but we sat there in the field on Saturday and said, well, what's the likelihood of this water main getting replaced soon? And that soon, maybe a year. No, it's not going to happen. So this water main from the former wedding gallery site to here now can be isolated from here to High Street. And so that gives us a little bit of breathing room in the event we have additional breaks, or if we have the worst case scenario where we have a serious issue with that water main running under City Hall. So this last slide, I really want to be careful and note that, we're not complaining here. And I'm positive no staff has ever complained about this. We've talked about it, but it's never been in sort of a bad attitude way. I think the staff here has made do with, what are probably subpar conditions for, a city office space. But I did just want to note them. And I think that these have probably come up before because the floor plan that I showed you, it addressed a lot of these issues. But, first of all, our office space is, between the furniture and the way that it's arranged, it's not very functional. We make do, and staff does a good job with what they're provided. As council, I think knows, the council chambers is fairly tight, especially when you're up at the dais or the table. And the council chambers is really our only true meeting space at City Hall. And so, we, especially in pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID times, you're occasionally meeting with, whether it's a resident, a business owner, developer, board members, we have to use that space. And so we don't have the need a lot for multiple meeting spaces, but it has come up, especially because that also serves as sort of our lunch break room. And so typically, we try not to schedule anything from like 11:30 to 1:30 because staff eat lunch at their desk or eat in the chambers. And so it's not insurmountable, but it is a limiting thing that we have to work around. And then lastly, that plan, they did have the provision of a couple of public restrooms. Today, we just have the one restroom in City Hall, which, it works for staff for sure. But I think more often than not, you would usually see a public restroom at a city facility. And so, that brings me to this slide, which is, what do we do next? And I'd want to be clear that this council has supported money in the budget for the repairs. And it really was just a variety of circumstances that caused us to pause that last year. City Hall is really the last facility that has not had investment. We've got a fairly new police department building. The DPW site has benefited greatly from being in the Tifa district, and the Tifa has helped with a lot of the work out there that has allowed other sites to become usable for economic development. We do have 2 barns that are still used by DPW that will probably need attention, but again, we've got the ability through the Tifa to help with some of that. And so I mentioned that revenue has rebounded, and we're to a point now where we'd like to bring forward a recommendation to help us on this path with a firm in hopes of having some planning before the next year's budget. And so I mentioned that in the winter of 1920, I had brought through a company, DLZ, that had worked on some of those older plans. They came through, they provided us some proposal. And then more recently, I talked with Bergman, which is a firm that we've used in the past and that has they've been doing more work in town. We've seen their plans come through for like building permits and things like that. And so between our experiences with them and what we've seen them do around town, those were just 2 places we started. They also both have structural engineers in their firms, which is an interesting thing when you're talking about the cupola and various aspects of the building structural soundness. And so those 2 proposals that we got just for exploring, we're in the teens of the tens. So between 12 and 18 was kind of where we were. I would tell you right now that I don't think either proposal got us what I think we need, but it was close. And so we would want to work on determining that final scope of work depending on council's input tonight. The other thing that I note here, and I don't do this lightly, but there could be a case made for really looking at, what is the cost to do those repairs and potentially upgrade our facility versus the cost of doing that somewhere else. And there was, and I've not, I probably should have talked to Holly a little bit about this, but Holly's been here the longest of anybody. And I know at one point there was some discussion when we owned the community center, which is now the Commons, about moving City Hall there. And so it's not completely crazy to suggest that City Hall could be somewhere else. And so, I'm not necessarily suggesting that, but I am saying that we might want to have a sense of what that cost benefit analysis is. I do note here that, City Hall is it's an iconic building. It would probably qualify for some incentives as a historic building from the private sector that the public sector can't take advantage of. It's a great location, lots of public parking. And for many of those reasons, it's a great City Hall location too. We've got the PD right next door. We're close to our parks. We are right in the center of town for our various residents. And, I don't know that there's a spot that we could easily go to and be, perfect right away. And so But I think that's something we have to think about as we look at this plan. And so tonight, what I was really hoping to do is introduce this topic so that it's not a surprise to council, to talk about the fact that we would like to consider a budget amendment to take advantage of our rebounded revenue for a project scope that has been identified in previous budget years, and get moving on bringing forward a proposal that could help us take the next step in our plan here, depending on council's feedback tonight. And so with that, that's my presentation. I am happy to answer any questions or just receive feedback.
Thanks, Corey. I appreciate that. That architectural rendering of the City Hall and Police Department attached, because it happened so long, I don't know. I mean, I know I have not seen that, and I do like that concept. And I know that right when you first came in, I think I even threw around the idea of, well, what if we were to extend, council chambers out to the east, because we have that open area, and would that benefit by converting a portion of that area? So I'm glad you have that, because that's something to kind of get an idea from. But I guess, in the conversation that you and I had too is, if we invest money into the building, is it going to benefit us in the future down the road with technology? And, when you start looking at the cost of new furniture, whether you go surplus, old new or new, that type of stuff, and really trying to maintain the existing building or adding on to it. So you and I have had that discussion, but I'm going to go ahead and open it up to council members. And I can only see Brandon and Noah right now. I don't have everybody on the screen because we've got the PowerPoint, but that's okay. Holly can tell me if anybody has their hand up. So I'll go ahead and Noah, go ahead.
Corey, I just want to make the consideration with the way COVID building spaces are looking for future. I don't think we're going to ever go back to a certain amount of occupied space. So I think, the way we're going to utilize future facilities has to be considered as well. And again, it's just changing. I know I'm dealing with a lot of state office buildings. I'm dealing with private commercial buildings, and the whole infrastructure is changing drastically. So that's just my comment.
Thanks, Noah. And I saw Tom's hand go up, so I'll call on Tom, and then I'll call on Brandon. So Tom, go ahead.
So I guess my question would be for Corey. Would the recommendation at this point be that kind of not knowing what all could be wrong, what all it could cost? I mean, at this point, we're kind of just looking at, should we get it assessed? And then we'd kind of have to pause and then pick back up from there, right? Once we know. I mean, if they come in and say the building's condemnable, that makes our decision easy. But if they come in and it's a realistic number that they say we can, make it usable for another 50 years easily for X, then we can make a better, more educated decision. So are we just looking for kind of a idea as to whether we want to assess the situation and then bring it back up?
Yes, Tom, I think that's close to what we're looking at here. Is kind of a two-part thing. Is one, you've got the assessment, and some of that assessment we know. I mean, we know we've got issues with the roof and that staircase. And so working with somebody to kind of help us understand what those costs might be, but also taking a look at the mechanical, the lighting, other aspects of the building that, have not had much maintenance in the last 30 years, and, understanding where we're at in that life cycle. And then secondly, doing what Scott called a programming analysis with that same firm that can kind of go through and say, what are our physical needs and how is this space accomplishing that or not? And so that scope of work, I think, is kind of twofold. And I think for that price range that I mentioned, we would likely be able to get close to both of those outcomes in this first step.
Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah, Tom kind of hit my point on the head. I mean, at this point, obviously, if it was feasible, I would love that new building. I mean, it was gorgeous. It was a great layout plan. But it's ultimately going to depend on what the reality of our current building is, right? God bless you guys for working in that. I mean, that's something else. But it's ultimately dependent on whether, I mean, if it's going to be more expensive to revitalize this old building to save face and compared to building new, I mean, that's ultimately going to be the financial decision we have to make, is what that cost analysis is going to be. And Noah's right. I don't believe we're ever going to go back fully to the same, working space that we're in. So, I mean, Tom's right. We have to kind of just acknowledge that, yes, we need to keep looking at this and then come back to this at a later point and kind of figure out what reality looks like.
Thank you, Brandon. Jean, go ahead.
Yeah, to me, I think the current workspace and the setup and the condition of it, is far below standard. It's been a little pet peeve of mine for quite a while. Like, you walk in and you're like, is this really what Williamston has to offer? Can you imagine being a developer and that's what you're walking into? Thank God they're walking into the most amazing staff ever that probably more than compensates for that. But just, to Tom's point, I think we need to know what we're looking at, and then we can make some really good educated decisions.
Thank you, Jean. Dan, do you want to chime in?
I agree. I think we need to get the assessment of the building to see where we're at with the building. We obviously we need to do some things to make better conditions for our staff, and to do that correctly, we need the assessment. I hadn't really considered a new building or a new wing until tonight, so I'm kind of wrapping my head around that, because we also have other large goals that we've discussed with city infrastructure, and I don't know how the funding works for all that. So I think we need to see the assessment, see where we're at with the building, and then go for them there. So I would be on board with getting a full assessment from the building and knowing what the costs are, and we go from there.
Thanks, everybody. Yes, Jean, go ahead.
Would we want to tonight to take some sort of action to allow Corey to move forward just on that end of things?
Corey, go ahead, chime in.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think we need a motion on that tonight. I appreciate that, but I think the goal of this discussion was, 1, introduce the topic, 2, get feedback, and 3, if there was a general feeling, which I think there is, that when we come back with a proposal, it's not a surprise, and there's potentially some buy-in for that, since it will require us to do a budget amendment in the current fiscal year.
Thank you. I think everybody is I think we're all on the same page. We want the best facility available for our city council, city staff, more so our city staff. City council, we can keep doing this for forever, beyond the screen and stuff. But, working conditions is super important. Storage of, city documents. I know I believe it's a slab. There's not even a basement to City Hall, correct? So, they are working with very limited space. I don't think we store anything off-site. And it's a concern. And, bringing it up to, technology standards, where if we did do a new wing, or if we had a new building or something like that, and, having the capability to really move forward, like Tom said, for the next 50 years, for when we're not here and our city staff isn't here, and whoever's running, the city of Williamston at that point. So I think we're on the right path, that we want to see some time and effort put into what can happen with City Hall currently, or if somebody comes back and says it's going to cost you more to do what you need to do, and maybe we look at that, the alternative. But I think we're all on the same page, Corey, that, you can move, start digging a little bit deeper into it and see what comes about.
Okay. And I appreciate that feedback. And I just want to note, tonight was not about saying we need a new building or
Right.
a bigger building. really was focused on the current issues that we have. And if we take care of those, not limiting future ability here. And so I just want to be clear with that. One other piece I want to note is, I mentioned the fact that in our audit, we were recognized for the fact that we've been able to have revenue above expenditures for several years running, which results in a healthy fund balance. And part of the reason you do that is for when you have years like this year where you're heading for a lot of uncertainty, it can allow you to manage your budget because you've got that rainy day fund. At some point, though, with that balance, auditors get a little, they like to ask the question, well, what's your plans for that? And generally speaking, most communities have a backlog of infrastructure needs, whether it's in the ground infrastructure or facility infrastructure. And when we think about our fund balance, my head always goes to if we can use that to leverage other opportunities to bring money in. And that means, grants, and we're pursuing some of those. We've got grants totaling over $365,000 that are going to be brought into town this year. And there's some other grants dealing with roads that we are looking at, in particular local streets, that has a June 1st deadline that we anticipate having some discussion with council about. And so, when we hear feedback from council that it is all connected and we can't say we're going to plug this much money into City Hall, we have all those other issues. And our priority will always be to try to use those dollars to leverage other opportunities. And so I don't want to lose sight of that, because that's an important thing for us to consider. And that's all I have. I appreciate the time.
All right. Well, a very good discussion item, and I look forward to talking about it more when you have more information for us. Moving along on the agenda, we do not have any correspondence information received, so I'll move right ahead to department head reports. Corey, you have your memo in here. Did you want to add anything to it or take questions from any council members?
I have nothing further. Thank you.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Corey's city manager report that we have? All right. We'll keep moving along. Chief, it's your turn.
Thank you, Mayor. Everything at the PD is going great. Our youngest officer, Dane Bowen, got off his FTO program, and he is out there working by himself. So we're staffed at 5 full-time officers, and I am still moving forward with the anticipation of trying to fill the last officer next month.
Great. Thanks so much. Keep up the good work. And you didn't have to leave us during this time, so we appreciate that. All right. In our packet, we did receive our building department report from Livingston County Building and Safety Engineering. And there's a lot of pages. There's a lot of things going on in town. So that's always great. If anybody has any questions regarding that, please reach out to Corey, and then he can put us in touch with our representative from Livingston County. I'll go around the board for subcommittee reports. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share? Hand up if you do. If not, I'll keep moving forward. All right. We have another opportunity for audience participation. Holly, did we have anybody join us?
No, we did not.
All right. Thank you so much. Council member comments. I'll go around the board. Dan Rhines.
No comments this evening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Brandon Lanyon.
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Noah Bellinger.
No comments for this evening.
Thank you. Gene Smith.
Just a thank you to Small Talk for coming and giving us their presentation, and again a huge thank you to Officer John P. Long for his years of service.
Great, thank you so much. And Tom Pratt?
No comments from me. Thank you.
All right. I want to thank Small Talk for being here as well, also for Officer P. Long coming back and joining us so that we could honor him and his 19 years of service to our community. With that, I'm looking for a motion to go into closed session regarding collective bargaining as permitted by MCL 15.268C.
So move, Smith.
Thank you.
Second, Lanyon.
Thank you. Barb, will you call the roll for that, please?
Lanyon,
Yes.
Pratt,
Yes.
Bellinger,
Yes.
Rhines,
Yes.
Gilroy,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
All right, please remember to go to the breakout room. I appreciate that.
Recording in progress.
All right, it looks like we are back in open session. And so I am looking for a motion for our action on closed session.
I'll make a motion to allow staff to move forward with a letter of understanding as discussed in the closed session and to authorize the mayor to sign the approved document. Smith.
Thank you.
Second, Lanyon.
Thank you. Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Pratt,
Yes.
Bellinger,
Yes.
Rhines,
Yes.
Gilroy,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Lanyon.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Council. I appreciate it. And with that, that concludes our items for this evening. And so I will make a motion to adjourn at 8:25 this evening. Thank you all so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Bye.
So moved. Bye.